Welcome to the Virtual Millionaire Show, the ultimate destination for all things real estate investing. I'm your host, Michael McDonald, a real estate investor based out of Las Vegas, and I am on a mission to help you scale your real estate business. This podcast is designed to educate, motivate, and inspire you on your journey to becoming a virtual millionaire in the world of real estate. We bring to you experts from successful owners across the country who share actionable advice that you can implement immediately. Our goal is to equip you with the knowledge and tools needed to launch and grow your real estate investing business, paving the way for financial success. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Property Pros Marketing. Property Pros Marketing drives motivated seller leads directly to you through digital marketing. Check them out at propertyprosmarketing.com. Now, let's get started with another episode of the Virtual Millionaire Show. All right, coming back to you with another episode of the Virtual Millionaire Show. Excited today because I have with me Mr. Mark Lane. Mark, how you doing today, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to having you on because I love having a different perspective. A lot of times in this show, we talk a lot about really starting and then scaling a real estate company. So I'm really excited to hear your perspective on the alternative of that maybe today. But before we dive in, really just kind of catch people up to speed, man, like a little bit about you, who you are, but also how you found yourself in real estate.
Yeah, well, that story can get a little bit long, so cut me off anytime you need to. So I've been in real estate now this is my 14th summer in July, August, be full 14 years. You know, I've seen both sides of the pendulum. When I got in, it was 2010, and that was the bottom of the recession. Of course, you know, it all crashed 2008. Bottom of 2010, it was still like ground zero. So I saw that side of it, foreclosures everywhere. People, like, of course, at that time, and we can kind of dissect some of this, but at that time, most people weren't buying direct from seller. People weren't marketing, at least nobody I knew. Certainly I wasn't. Didn't know anything about it. Yeah, no, we didn't have to. And that's why we didn't. I mean, I think everybody I knew, even the best people I knew, they were just buying off the MLS. That's all anybody knew. So that was a time where if you knew what you were doing, you could, you know, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had some coaching and was taking massive action. And I was out there launching an average of, once I kind of got my system built, I was making 20 to 25 offers per day just on the MLS. There was just enough inventory to do that. And we would pick up probably an average of 3 to 5 deals per month just off the MLS. And then I was wholesaling those. Like, I didn't even know anybody else was really wholesaling off the MLS, wholesaling most of those, you know, then pushed through everything, got into about 2015, 2016 timeframe, and the market started to change. You know, there weren't much for foreclosures on the market anymore. And I found myself in about 2016 in a pretty rough spot where I'm seeing kind of the writing on the wall of, I'm going to be out of business if I don't figure out how to fix this problem, the lead generation problem. And so thankfully I had enough of a rental portfolio at that time built where I was selling off some rentals to stay afloat, but my runway was getting shorter. So I ended up, I think it was 2016, I became a member in a mastermind, and I was paying $25,000 a year to be a part of that. That helped me learn direct response marketing, direct to seller marketing, all that stuff. Got connected with all the contacts, all that. Came back and jumped immediately into doing direct mail, and we were sending out 25,000 pieces per month. I think at that time it was actually per month. Now I've got it set towards every 6 weeks. And I think I was first to the market in my market doing that on any type of scale. And just it exploded.
Was before everybody was doing it. And I can imagine your phone just melted.
Oh man, it was nuts. I mean, it was phenomenal. It's awesome. But yeah, it was going crazy. So yeah, our first month out of the gate, we spent, I don't know, $8,500 on direct mail. And I think we brought in about 150,000. So we were averaging 1,000% plus ROI on our marketing for at least a solid year or more, probably like a year and a half. So we were doing the direct mail, and that worked really, really well. And so then we added in the PPC. At that time, that was working pretty well. So then we added in Facebook ads, and that was kind of working. So we were like, you know what, this is working really good. Let's push up the direct mail up to 37,000 pieces. And then I saw that kind of like die off a little bit. So that taught me that there is a kind of a golden range for your marketing, right? Like you got to find that spot, that sweet spot.
To give like listeners a background, because I know where you're at, but as far as that journey, this has always been in Des Moines, right? The Des Moines area, Iowa.
I've always just done everything in my own market.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
But there was a diminishing return after you started sending 30-some thousand versus that 20-some thousand sweet spot there.
Yep, we saw it drop from 1,000% plus ROI to the high 500s. So we really didn't get any extra deals. It's just more spend. So that's pretty interesting to see that.
Wouldn't it be nice to get a 500x ROI on marketing these days, though?
Oh,
or
we
do you
still
say
do.
five?
Oh, yeah.
Is it okay? Let me make sure I'm understanding this right. 5x, right?
Yeah. Well,
So for every dollar you're spending, you're getting 5 back, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to clarify because I'm like, I got to learn your ways, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So that's correct. So anyways, we had all the marketing going, and then of course, and probably even a little bit in that in between, I was getting buried, and I'm like, I need to hire an assistant, so put it out there, hire an assistant. She started, and that was going great. But then I still found myself like I was acquiring all these deals. I didn't have time to sell them. I'm like, so I would always be right down to the wire to get these deals sold, or I'd be selling them for less than what I probably should have just to unload them. Then I found myself, I'm like, okay, I need to hire somebody for dispositions. And so the girl that was my assistant was actually a realtor too. She liked sales. She wanted to take on that role. I said, okay, well, you got to help me find an assistant now. So we put some ads out there, found an assistant. The assistant was phenomenal, which that became a whole nother story of itself, but she was phenomenal. She came on. So we were working, 3 of us, going great. And then I found myself like, I still can't keep up with all the appointments, and I never have time to do follow-up. And then I hired a sales guy. And so as my brother-in-law, he did a fantastic job at it. Anyway, next thing you know, we went from, it was just me, and I just had to cover my cost of like $5,000 a month, right? Very small nut to cover. And next thing you know, we're at $65,000 a month in overhead. And so we were still, for the most part, doing pretty well. But then COVID happened in 2020. And next thing you know, we couldn't get in people's houses. Market slowed, came to a screeching halt temporarily, at least on the acquisition side. And next thing you know, we started kind of getting some office drama going as well. And I just found myself in a place, of course, and going through a divorce, like just a lot of stuff compounding all at once. And I find myself in a place of, this just isn't what I signed up for. Like, I'm not enjoying my business anymore. It's like I'm really not cutting all that much of a profit because of how much overhead. And even though in 2019, we did 110 deals. So we weren't small by any means. We're doing great for most people's standards. But even at 110 deals, our net profit after everything hit the bottom line, we're only netting 200 and something thousand a year, barely over 200, So whereas now it's just my assistant and myself, and now we net more along that 500 range. So much leaner, simpler business model. And we're adding a half a dozen Class A rental properties per year. So it's just changed a lot. Once we went through all that stuff, went through the divorce, went through COVID, let everybody go, got rid of the office, went back to working from home, and just simplified everything. We really just said, how can we work this business and be more profitable without the hassle? And instantly, from just a couple shifts, our deals became twice as profitable and infinitely more simple. So now our deal average used to be 11,000. Now it's 20. Now it's 22,000 plus. So it's just a lot of things have changed.
Good stuff, man. Well, I appreciate you taking us on that journey, because I think it really gives people that perspective of like, okay, here's where you started, here's what you grew through. And you just realized at the end of the day that bigger isn't always better. It's hard to fathom to me because, I have friends who are in commercial who will do a deal a year or 2 deals a year, and they'll make a couple $100,000, and there's only 2 transactions. But then you fathom what it actually takes to facilitate 110 transactions. Like, talk about a lot of bandwidth, a lot of liability, a lot of risk. So you found yourself that sweet spot now. where
Yeah,
you're
and
not
I think it's
dealing with
tough
that.
because when you start to realize you like, and you're the same way, right? You can see all the pieces, how to put them all together, and you say, well, shoot, like I know without question that I could go dominate the Midwest if I wanted to bad enough, right? Like I know how to put those pieces together. I know this business inside and out. But then I'm looking at it, I'm running numbers of all the different heads I'd have to have working, and I'm like, it just wouldn't be worth it. I don't think it makes sense financially to scale it beyond a certain point. They're just like the marketing. There's a diminishing return beyond a certain point.
There is a diminishing return, absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting, right? Because I talk a lot about how we've grown our team, and our team is still sizable compared to single operators. Because I have an operator, I have 2 acquisitions, I have 2 lead managers, I have a TC, I have the whole team built out. And there are months where if the team doesn't perform, if we don't acquire as many properties as we needed to, which is pretty much like 1 a week, just to barely break even. And we're
Yeah.
talking about averaging $20,000 to $25,000 on either a wholesale and or flip. Our model
Okay.
is flipping, but it gets to the point, right, where you really have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, what do I really want?
Yeah.
And I think this is a very important question for people who are listening to this, to ask yourself, like, don't look at what I'm doing or don't look at what Mark's doing. Ask
Mhm.
yourself, like, what you want. Do you want to
Yeah.
manage people? Because there
Mhm.
there can be freedom with what I'm doing also versus maybe what you're doing, because I'm on a podcast and my team is still making calls, right? But at the same time,
Right.
there's a lot of moving parts that come with that.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
got to manage a sales team.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There's not a right or wrong answer. There's people that have scale that are doing phenomenally well. Not very many, but there are those guys or gals that are doing really, really well with some scale. And then there's investors that are pretty small that are very financially free, that have very low overhead and a ton of rental properties, and they're doing phenomenally well too. So there's a business model that works for any of us. It's just what we want out of it. So I realized for myself, I don't like the managing side. I love doing real estate. I like putting the deals together. I like talking with the sellers. I like being in the houses. So I didn't want to be, once I found myself in that scale mode and I'm sitting at a desk most of the time, like managing numbers and spreadsheets and P&Ls, I'm like, I don't like this. This isn't what I like to do, you
Yep.
know?
I found myself that way as well. I think the hardest thing for me was when I was acting as the operator in my business, because I feel like we're similar in the fact, like, we're just deal guys. Like, we love doing deals. And I was talking to my buddy yesterday about this. I'm like, I just love doing deals. I love transacting. It's fun. I
Yeah.
truly get a thrill from doing a deal. But when you
Right.
have to deal with bookkeeping and all the other things, when you're really growing and having to know where all the money's moving, like, that's a whole different deal. That's running a business. And
Yeah.
so for me, the biggest move I made was finding an operator to take all of that responsibility of that, all of those moving parts, to give me the freedom to go out and make connections and get on podcasts and
Yeah.
do joint venture deals and things like that.
I truly believe, even though I love my model and I'm sticking to it, I do believe that if a person is going to go the route of being the owner instead of the operator, that they do have more options and opportunity in the future, right? Like if you can probably go build multiple businesses if you wanted to, if you continued going that route, whereas I couldn't. Like I can't get out of this role unless I decide to scale it again. So it's just kind of but I'm looking at my future of like, I don't really plan to run a bunch of businesses. I plan to keep doing what I'm doing for the next 10 years and keep adding some really nice rental properties. And, I'm already financially speaking, and I
Yeah.
just want to get more financially free. So for me, it's like, all I have to do is just keep duplicating what I'm doing and the road's already there. So, but
Yeah.
I think that somebody that's playing the owner role versus the operator most definitely has more options for their future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious because I love how you've niched it down. So, like, you've found out what you want and what, like, that success looks like for you. You've decided,
Yep.
hey, Class A rentals is my thing. So you're cherry picking the best deals. How long did it take you to learn that lesson of, like, how long were you scaling before you learned that lesson of, hey, I can't do this anymore? Like, was it multiple years? And here's the magic question. What was it like transitioning? Because I feel at a point where I'll just say it. Like, we're running a $120,000 a month operation overhead.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't include anything else, right? That's our nut. That's what we run. So when you get to that point, I feel like, man, how do you slow this train down if I did want to kind of like modify a little bit? So I'm curious on your perspective on what that looked like for you.
Mine was pretty easy because I just wiped the slate
One
clean.
day,
I
it's
just let
gone.
everything go, like almost overnight. So yeah, COVID helped because that was a big defining factor in the decision. But so I would say that the climb took, I started the marketing 2017 and we ended in 2020. So it was a 3-year climb. Well, at least a 2-year climb. Then there's probably a year of like maintenance and we were building systems and all that kind of stuff. Then once it kind of came crashing down, I saw some things. I saw the writing on the wall before COVID even happened of just like, it's just so many expenses starting to take shape. And I guess she was like my assistant / COO. She was doing everything admin and she was phenomenal, but she got very expensive and rightfully so. That's her talent was demanding 100,000 plus a year as basically a high level assistant. But then she wanted more. She wanted profit sharing. She wanted ownership of the company. She wanted like all these different things. Man, like where's the stop? And then on top of that, we were paying benefits. We had a health savings account. We had, just the office space, and we were paying for water bottles to come in and like coffee service and the windows washed and just all those fees. And like I'm just sitting here. It's like a movie reel of all these expenses just constantly flowing. And I'm like, this is getting out of hand. And one of the things, her perspective, because she was making a lot of the decisions, her perspective was, well, if you're making all this profit, it should be going to the employees and to make a better work environment. And I'm thinking, this should be going towards my investments. Like, I want every ounce of profit coming in the door to be invested, not to be spent. So there was a lack of congruency there between my right hand and me, and that caused some of the implosion in that decision as well.
I'm really happy that you broke all those expenses down because I think a lot of people forget like, oh, Uncle Sam wants their taxes, right? We got to pay unemployment insurance. Most quality employees want benefits. And by the time you look up, it's like, whoa, where did all these expenses come from? So you can kind of lose track of that, though. It's going to sound funny to say this, but people refer to W-2 job as like a hamster wheel, right? Like you can't get off this hamster wheel. I've felt and somewhat experienced before running a multiple 7-figure company and feeling like I was on a hamster wheel, because that's why I was asking from your perspective, almost like, wow, I almost lost track. I wasn't, when I wasn't in the owner's box, I was so in the midst of every single thing flying around that's really hard to step back and look and actually see what's going on and realize that where all these junk expenses come from and these things that we're not even really utilizing anymore.
Yeah, they call it cost creep, and it most definitely creeps in for sure.
It really does. All right, so let's talk about your model. So you're in Des Moines. Obviously during COVID, a lot of people had to pivot, right? The virtual model became kind of a sexy thing, buying over the phone. We still do a good amount of that. I believe your model is a little bit different, though. Can you kind of talk to your model? You're running appointments, or what does that look like today?
Yeah, so we have only 2 people. It's my assistant, who's my stepdaughter, and myself. So she handles basically everything admin. She answers the phones, sets the appointments, handles all the property management stuff, the light bookkeeping. Our CPA handles the heavy side of that. So basically everything office-wise. And then I handle the sales appointments and the general contracting. So we'll probably do like 50 deals this year. And then we usually will keep, like last year we kept, I think, 6 Class A rental properties. So you look at that, we're wholesaling 40 plus, and then we're keeping, 5, 6, 7, something like that. So yeah, I would say the one thing I looked at when even when we were doing a lot more volume, is that I had to sell properties to keep everything moving. And I look back of some really, really good deals that I let go of just to cover overhead. And that hurt me bad. And so I look back, I'm like, oh, there's millions and millions of dollars worth of real estate there that I should have in my portfolio, but I don't have it because I had this overhead I had to cover.
What does every seasoned investor say? I wish I would have never sold more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anytime I'm on a podcast, they're like, what's one thing you regret or one thing you do differently? I'm like, man, at least keep 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10. At this point, I've done many hundreds of deals. I have no idea how many. And if I would have kept that 1 of 5, 1 out of 10, I wouldn't even be thinking about money at this point. I'd have so much cash flow and equity built up. A lot of them probably paid off. So anyway, that was a big shift of just realizing, man, we've been coming across a lot of really great deals, but we always had to let them go. And the ones I could hang on to at that point were not the types of properties I wanted to own. They were more of like that Class C type of rental property where we could keep it, and we were buying it so well, we could even pull some cash out along with it. So we got our wholesale fee plus a rental. So those worked for that model then. But then as I progressed into a much smaller team, I wanted to own better quality real estate. Then I set it on more of a high Class B, Class A type of rental property.
What does that look like in Des Moines? Like, what's a Class B, A price range look like? And are you able to cash flow those, or do you really care as much about the cash flow as you might as the equity and the appreciation?
Yep. So now with the current rates, we are usually coming to table, but we're putting a lot of money down to buy them. All right. So I would say on average, we're 40,000 out of pocket to hold a property. But I look at that as like, that's okay, because
Store of wealth.
Yeah. I mean, what am I going to do? I'm either going to have the cash sitting in the bank doing nothing, or I'm going to buy a really nice piece of property that's going to pay me 4 or 5 different ways. So I always pay it down enough to where it cash flows positive. And usually I like to get it in that 250 range. So there's a couple I probably have 60,000 into them. And there's some where like, we're not really quite that much out of pocket. I think we just bought one. We'll be like, well, I take that back. It'll still be 30,000 plus. So most of them now with the current rates, we're not buying them for less than 30,000 down. But to give you a grasp on the numbers, I would say the Class A type, those have an ARV of, most of those are getting into about the 350 range. And by the time I pay it down, it's fully remodeled and we're owing around 200,000 or a touch less. We're having 100,000, 150,000 equity per property, and they're fully remodeled, set for the future, don't have much for repairs. So yeah, I look at that as my goal by the time I'm 50 is to have 50 of those. And by the time I'm 60, probably 100. Those properties are going to double in value. So that'll easily, by the time I'm 60 years old, be a $50 million portfolio.
That's huge, man. And how much are you renting those for typically? Like the ones at ARVs 350?
Yeah, we're starting on some of those to push over the 2,000 per month. That just happened the last year where some of those started getting beyond that. So I think our highest is like 2,100.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I think a lot of people listening might be thinking like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money to leave into properties. I know initially I thought that, but then when you look at the long-term play of the appreciation and the quality of the asset, I mean, obviously you have to take into consideration less tenant headaches, hopefully, right? Do you do anything creative with those, or are you primarily just doing long-term rentals? That's it.
Yeah, I'm like, for the most part, I don't really want to take down anything. I don't plan to hold for the long term. So I don't want to own, a Class C rental that I'm going to own for 5 years and then flip it. It's just not my model. So I'm looking at, and all this is very intentional. I've set myself up in a way to where this model makes sense. Like I 100% debt free. My house is paid off. So I don't really have much for costs at all. And when I'm doing all the wholesaling, the whole purpose of the wholesaling is to bring in profits so that I can buy these nice rental properties. So for me, somebody might be saying, well, I can't imagine putting that much down. Well, that's the entire purpose. Otherwise, what would I do with it?
I mean, you'll pay tax on those gains anyway, right? So you might as well.
Yeah. And so and if I can be putting $40,000, $50,000 down on a really nice house, that's going to offset my taxable income. If anything, I might not even have any taxes for the year, because I'm going to technically show a loss on my rental business and then I'll have profit on my wholesaling business.
I love it, man. Are you managing those properties then? Or
yeah, my assistant, she manages. Yeah. Yep, she manages all of them. So yeah, we brought everything in-house several years ago. So I have a local mentor. He's also been my hard money lender over the years. He's lent money on almost all my deals that I've used hard money on. And that's been his model. So he learned it from John Schwab. I'm sure you probably know that name. But so my mentors, I think late 70s at this point. He's been in the game for 40 years, and he's just been slowly teaching me all these lessons over the course of 14 years I've been working with him. And that's his model. He's always focused on owning really nice property, really nice houses in the suburbs, ideally going to attract really good tenants, and ours do. I mean, we have just almost no maintenance. We handle our maintenance calls very quickly, but I've never had an eviction. We've had one person pay late 1 month and since we've taken property management back. That means literally every single tenant pays on time every single month and has for years straight. So to me, the rental business is amazing once you get the management taken care of.
Right. And one thing that we did early on was, I mean, a lot of people would question, is it the right time to outsource it? Like, if you have great assets and you don't have a lot of headaches, you could probably manage quite a few properties like that. It's when you have an apartment complex that has a lot of turnover, that can be a headache. We have a 12 unit where we just said, hey, from the beginning, we don't want to manage this thing. We're going to have another management company manage it. But then you start to realize, man, how much the fees add up, the management fees, all of the upcharges on the fixes. There's just so many things that you can't really control. You can do your best to keep an eye on it, but it's one of those creep expenses that kind of get away from you at that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, property management will eat up at least half of your cash flow. So it's just one of those things where you got to decide if that makes sense. One of the things my mentor always taught me is that nobody's ever going to care about your property as much as you will, which is true. I mean, look, those are my assets. Those things are going to be handed down to my kids. I want those things taken care of really, really well.
And the same thing goes for a business. Like if you're scaling, right?
Yep. So yeah, it's been great. I would say most people can't start out in Class A single family or Class A multifamily, same thing. It's just a more expensive asset. So it's not either one. You have to have some type of a strong income source to buy your way into them, or you need to step up from the Class D and C type properties. And then when you sell those, then you can move all those profits into much nicer homes. So usually how it goes for people.
Yeah, I'm thankful early on I had a partner and a mentor really who had went through the progression of owning these old houses and having all of the issues. Like cash flow was great, but then you'd have so many issues that all of your capital expenditures would just wipe away your entire year of cash flow. And so I was thankful that I started subscribing to that model of newer houses, better neighborhoods, C at the worst, but ideally B neighborhoods. And I've picked up a couple in, I would say, B plus neighborhoods. And I was honestly almost shocked about how much rent I was able to get for a property in the suburb of Omaha. Like I'm getting $2,500 a month for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath rental property. And my mortgage is $1,350 a month. And it's crazy how good of appreciation, but how good of tenants and how good of rents you can actually get. So question on the rental management side, what platform are you using on that to manage your properties? Are you using any sort of like a rental platform?
I've never even been in it. I don't know. It's Yardi. I think it's Yardi is who we use. Yardi. So I'm pretty sure.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I've thought about some of that stuff. I'm like, man, I probably need to figure out like how to get in this in case worst case scenario. But yeah, just like you, that's one of the blessings of hiring great people is, some of the stuff I don't even know how to do, and it just gets taken care of.
That's a beautiful thing. I love it. All right, man, let's kind of transition here. I want to talk about lead generation because I know you're big on that. Obviously, you're sourcing a ton of deals and whatnot. So what's that look like as far as your marketing and lead gen today?
Yep. So we now, thankfully to your referral for the PPC, so we're currently now running direct mail and PPC. That's really all we do. So we've done different things over the past. So we started into marketing, like I said, 2017 with pretty heavy direct mail. And I would say that's always been our staple. When I think of lead generation, I break it down into 3 different legs, right? They've got your prospecting, your marketing, and then your Dream 100 or AKA your networking. For the marketing, our direct mail has always been our staple. Like I look at that as it's never going to change. There's always people that are going to have to get their mail at their house. Like there's nothing that's going to happen that's going to say, okay, post office, you're not allowed to bring mail anymore. It's just never going to go away. Like PPC, I think is fantastic now that I have a great person doing it. In the past, we've always struggled finding good people to do that and to manage it. And I've
Shout out
heard
to
countless
Anthony at
other
Property
people.
Pros Marketing. I got to give him some love on that because it sounds like he's doing great for you. So I'm sure he'd be happy
Yeah,
to
it
hear.
actually, so in April, it just surpassed our direct mail as far as leads that came in. So that's huge because nothing's even come close to it in the past.
That's
So
killer for
yeah,
PPC, especially in a
yeah,
market like Des Moines too.
yeah. Currently, we just had something messed up to where our ads were shut off for about a week. But yeah, we're contracting, I believe, about 1 out of 5 right now. It's
Wow,
pretty good. Yeah, and
that's
I think
really good.
I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but our cost per lead was, I believe, in the 150 to 160 range as of April. So yeah,
Wow.
it's looking good. So anyway, we have really run those. I really don't do all that much prospecting anymore, just because quite frankly, I don't need to. And I think that, if anybody's listening, when you're starting out, you're going to be doing a lot more prospecting than anything else. Prospecting, probably some networking. If you don't have much money to bring to the table, you can't really do all that much marketing. There's always some small niche list that you can jump on, but for most part, you're going to be spending a lot of time prospecting. And then as you progress, and you start to make more money, you're going to want to leverage your time. And so now I would rather spend money and get those leads come in versus going out prospecting. So our prospecting is pretty low now. And then our marketing is about as heavy as it needs to be to bring in the amount of deals that we want to do. So I wouldn't want to add any other marketing sources, even if we could, and we can, but it would mean probably having to hire a sales guy again, and probably have anything over where we're at would mean adding another person. And it's just like, I hate the words, use the word comfortable, but we're comfortable. If we just like our business model. So with what we're doing right now, it brings in like just the perfect amount of leads and deals for us.
That's incredible. Man, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it, right? Because I just did some math. $150 cost per lead for 5 leads to close a deal. I'm sure you've heard, right? That's $750 a cost to get a deal, which is unheard of, honestly, especially in this market. But because when I think about it, as you know, I'm in Vegas and I ran TV commercials in Las Vegas for a couple months.
Yeah.
And that's all the time I wanted to give it because how expensive our cost per lead was. We were paying almost $1,000 to get a call.
Mm-hmm.
That's just to get a call. And then the call comes in and it's somebody who has a house listed or something like that, right? So it's just like, holy moly. To think about getting a deal for $750, that sounds pretty good to me. But
we've seen our direct mail almost start to hit those numbers where the amount of leads that come in are pretty darn low, but we're still getting a really great ROI. So it's kind of weird, right? Like we're still hitting, at least a high 500, up sometimes 1,000% or 10x. So yeah, but our cost per lead can still be, $1,000, or close to that. So it's just really weird how that's changed. I think it has nothing other than competition. The more people have come in that started doing it, it's watered it down. But at the same time, the market's good enough to where we have big enough margins to where we're still getting a really good return there.
Do you run into a lot of nationwide wholesalers or larger companies in Des Moines yet, or not really as much?
Yeah, all the time. And I smash them.
Yeah.
I always say they'll never have a chance at beating me if I'm face to face with the seller and they're trying to call in over the phone.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, I have people calling all the time. I meet with sellers all the time. They're like, somebody called in or somebody's been trying to harass me over the phone and buy the house. And as long as I can get there and have that conversation, they just don't stand a chance. So that's one thing I love about the face-to-face, like local type of business model. I'm sure people get deals, but I don't know how people do it and are really, really successful with it. What I see as the local market experts, I see those deals fall apart all the time. Or the wholesalers get them under contract, they can't get them sold. They're tying up that contract for too long. Seller gets anxious and upset, and it just like always problems because they don't know everything that's going on in that market. Whereas like for me as the local market expert, all my deals get sold by text message because I know exactly who they would go to. I know who my buyers are. There's just not all the hassle of trying to send it out to 10,000 different buyers and trying to schedule open houses and all that stuff. It's just to me like that. I give it up for anybody that has that model. I just haven't had interest in making it work.
Yeah, and obviously for me, I've done it both. I've done both ways. Initially, when I was in my local market, I did find a lot of success of beating out competition just from building that relationship and that trust
Yeah.
factor, but also creating that local presence and authority. So like we're huge on reputation, right? So we never want to screw a seller over, string them on for too long or anything like that. But I've also got the taste of the virtual model, right? This is the Virtual Millionaire Show. So obviously, I've got that experience, and I haven't met a lot of people who've executed at a really high level with the virtual model. There's a higher fallout rate. Buying deeper is a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
And there's
I
just
would agree.
other challenges that you have to work through. It can be done, right? But
Yeah. I have a friend locally that is an investor friend locally that is utilizing PPC, working outside the market, and he's doing great. He completed several deals now. That one, it was a wholesale deal, and I think it came in mid 80s for profit. I mean, I just did one that size, closed on it last month, and him and I were talking. He mentioned that deal. I was like, I literally got one about the exact same size right now. But yeah, to be a virtual deal and 80 some thousand, yeah, it's crazy.
right. So with all that said, there's a lot of like talk, and especially in Nebraska, which is my main market, they've done some legislation, and I've seen Iowa coming out with some stuff. How does that affect somebody who's trying to wholesale, or are you familiar with what I'm talking about there in Iowa?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's officially in effect in Iowa, and it's 100% official as far as you're going to get fined or get in trouble as of July 1st. So we can no longer assign. So either one, you have to essentially have a real estate agent present or representing you, or you need to finance it. You need to double close either, or you have to come to the table with money and close on it. So for us, like, I've got my line of credit, I have my hard money lenders, private lenders if I need them. So I'm not worried. I think the experts that have the resources in place are not gonna, it's just gonna be like a blink of an eye. Like, it's not gonna be a big deal. We'll just close on them. If anything, it might make us more profitable because we'll probably wholesale most of them now. So we'll probably go to more of a 75% wholesale type model. I think for a brand new wholesaler that was planning to not have any skin in the game and just sign it off to the next guy, I think they're going to struggle. And I think that for the markets that have this type of legislation in place, I think that the new and aspiring wholesalers are going to start to weed out a little bit. So I think this will start to separate the pack of the experienced players versus the inexperienced.
That's exactly right. And in 2022, we were slinging wholesale deals left and right, completely crushing it before the interest rates took a turn. And I just realized that a lot of the wholesalers that were out there, like they changed careers. They
Yeah.
either became a realtor, got into another business, or whatever the case may be. But the people who are there and realize, like, hey, this is the opportunity, actually lean into that, become more of an authority,
Yeah.
be able to take the properties down, and you will make more money. And that's what we found as well. We might make a 10, 15,000 wholesale, but if we get it sold on the MLS, we're going to find that person who's going to pay even more. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think
definitely
we're in a
advantages
unique
there.
part of the market right now, a unique market cycle where for the people that really want to dig their heels in, I think we've got a great chance to get some great positioning in the market and some really good staying power. So for us, we're like with adding another marketing source and we're kind of starting to do a couple other things. We already have a good hold on the market, but I want to dig in just a little bit deeper to where we've got just such a good, strong foundation. So I think that I would encourage anybody that's listening, if you're in it, dig in deeper, because this is anytime you have these transitioning types of cycles in the market, a lot of people are going to get washed away, and the people that stay will absorb more of the market share.
Yep. One of the biggest pieces of advice that my mentors gave me is like, hey, these times were kind of tough in the last year and a half. And a lot of people, the first expense they look to cut is the marketing.
Yeah.
But what happens when you cut your marketing?
Yeah.
You just
Yeah,
bleed
it's
your
coming
business to death. Yep.
in. Yeah.
And so as hard as it was to maintain a payroll and to maintain a $50,000 a month marketing budget, we kept it going because we needed to keep feeding the team, and we just had to get creative. So like,
Yeah.
you made a recommendation to a realtor. I had a guy in Vegas who hit me up. He's like, hey man, I've got a lead in Des Moines, and it was a condo. So it was like, okay, what are we going to do with this lead? Because we don't really want to buy it, and we can't wholesale it because there's no investor who can actually hold at that association. long story short, by the time this thing comes out, we'll have closed on this, but we basically are listing a wholesale deal and it's sold
Okay.
to a retail buyer and we're going to get paid in between there. It's going to be a great deal. And
Nice.
it would have never happened had we not just put our creative hat on, right? And used our network. So thank you for that introduction. Aaron's been great.
Yeah. Yeah. Resourcefulness is everything for an entrepreneur. It's just having that conversation the other day that, if somebody's trying to do business and they don't, that is the epitome of an entrepreneur is resourcefulness. If you're wanting everything to just go slow and easy, like this just isn't the business for you.
No,
Go back to work.
Yep. Awesome, dude. So you're talking about doing some new marketing channels. What's next? What's on the horizon for that?
I don't think that we're really going to be adding anything else in right now. Working with Anthony, we're going to go back to trying Facebook ads. We're going to a little bit of twist on it though. Like I like to do video type stuff. So I think we're going to run a little bit of a carousel of some stationary picture type ads along with some video type ads. So I think that'll just kind of be a little bit of branding along with some mix of direct response. So we'll see how that goes. And, with Facebook, I know people are there for entertainment. They're not there to sell their house. So I don't expect anything great out of it, but at a low enough cost, it will probably make some sense.
Yeah, I would not advise anybody to start Facebook unless they're okay with just running that budget for 6 months to a year. And the reason I say that is because you can get a pretty good cost per lead. But if you pick up, honestly, a couple deals a year from that channel, it's a huge win. We've gotten some huge deals just out of random from a Facebook message from somebody who saw our ad. So you just never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah. When we did it years ago, I think we got 3 deals in a year, but it was only costing us $500 a month. So it's a very small ad spend. Like we did Valpak last year and it just bombed. So tried that. We're looking at like huge reach. That was going to, I think it was like 105,000 people a month. And it's like right in front of them, kind of like direct mail. So we're like, you know what, let's try it. And that was fairly expensive. I think that was like $5,500 a month ish. And they required a 6-month commitment. So I'm locked in for at least 30 grand.
Wow.
And so we're right at the very end and just nothing, maybe 1 to 2 calls per month. And so right at the very end, we finally get a deal and it didn't even cover the marketing costs. I mean, maybe about half of that. But I always look at it like, you've got to be willing to try. Like that is marketing 101 of just having the willingness to try it. If you're starting out, you probably don't want to overcommit. You don't want to go in super heavy. Go in with something you can afford to do for 6 months but try it. And what I found is that all marketing works. It all works. Some of it just doesn't work great and others do work great. So it's about just testing and tweaking and tracking it and until you figure out what works.
So true. Yeah. And I found that out with billboards in my local market. And on the last day that our contract was, we got a deal from the billboard and it made me feel better about it because we broke even. I'm curious, have you tested like billboards, radio, TV in your local market? I feel like that market would be received well.
Yep, I did TV a long time ago before I was ever even marketing heavy, and it bombed. I spent 15 grand, didn't make anything. But of course, we didn't have like the way that people do TV now. They've got it going straight to a website, or they're much more savvy than what we were. But what I was finding was that most of the calls we were getting were all like way out of town. That's one thing I did not like about it, is that we couldn't control the radius. So we'd often get calls 2 hours, 3 hours away. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to go mess with that. So I did not like it for that reason. And it was costly. And I just didn't feel like it was something I knew anything about. Like direct mail isn't really, to me, all that hard to figure out. Whereas TV, it's like, I never felt that I really understood what we were doing. And I didn't feel like they were doing anything to help educate me. They were just fully focused on selling me on whatever they could sell me on. Radio, I would say probably works. There's a guy here that does it and he does it very heavy. So I would assume that if it wasn't working, he wouldn't be doing it. He hits it really hard. I would say radio probably works pretty well if you do it enough. And we're talking like every time you turn on the radio, you hear him. So he's hitting it hard. Billboards, I don't think work here either. I've seen several people go up with them and then they all come back down within a month or two. Yeah, I really think that there's a lot of smaller stuff a person can do, some different types of like magazines and newspaper, like some of that type of stuff. But, just dialing in the direct mail and the PPC. Like if you can have those two channels working, for the most part, you're going to, and if necessary, have some other things, some heavy prospecting, so like building up your networking, all that on top of the marketing. And just those two, along with those other things we just mentioned, anybody can run at least $250,000 net business pretty easily.
I love it, man. 100% agree with you on that. So Mark, you've got a book that just came out. So can you kind of speak to that? I've heard some really great things, a lot of testimonials that you've been sharing. So can you talk about that real quick?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the book is called More Leads, More Deals, More Profits. You can find it on Amazon. So yeah, it just came out May 1st, so we're 2 weeks in. So the book is 100% about lead generation. And in the book, I break down kind of a lot of things that nobody really talks about of how to build your brand. Like most people don't really understand like what branding is. Talk about like with branding, it's all about the customer experience. Every step of a person takes going through your process is part of your overall brand. And when most people talk about brand, they're kind of talking about the logo or the colors or something like that, or the name. Those are small factors. The big factor is the experience that your customers get doing business with you. And then we talk about setting up your USP, your unique selling proposition. Like ours is guaranteed cash offer, easy. I'm drawing a blank on what it is. But anyway, we have our USP and it's on everything. So it's on our folders, it's on our flags, it's on my truck, like it's everywhere we go. And then we go into kind of some stuff I mentioned earlier, which is breaking down the lead generation model into 3 different legs. So you've got your prospecting, your marketing, and your networking. So to dial it in even more, one of the things a person should be considering or thinking about when they're starting out is most people, I'm going to digress a little bit. I put a post on my Facebook page probably a couple of years ago. I said, what are you guys struggling with right now? And somebody had mentioned how to find good deals. And as I thought about that answer more and more, I realized like that's, for the most part, that's everybody's problem until they get up to a high enough level. But it's everybody's problem of like, how do I find good deals? And the problem is in the answer itself of how do I find deals, right? So when a person is thinking, how do I find deals? They don't have the confidence of generating their own deals, right? Like Michael, if you wanted to go to another state and start business, you would immediately know what to do because you know how to generate your own leads, right? You're not in, I need to find a deal mode. You know how to generate. So the whole point of this book is how to go from finding to generating. And we do that through understanding all the different parts of lead generation, from everything from your unique message to how do you communicate with the seller to all the different types of marketing and prospecting, networking that are available. So it just goes pretty deep into all of that. To my knowledge, there's not another book that covers it. It's like a nice boot camp all wrapped up in a $20 book.
That's incredible. So can people find that on Amazon, or where can they find that?
Yeah, just go to Amazon. I unfortunately had my VA quit on me right before we got our book funnel done. So right now it's just on Amazon. You can find it there. And yeah, if you would, check it out and leave me a 5-star review if you like it.
Beautiful. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well, so people can click on that and check it out. And with all that said, man, this has been amazing. Thank you for coming on and pouring in a ton of value here today. And by the way, guys, if you get value from this episode, please tell a friend, share it out there, and of course, subscribe. We'd appreciate that. And for any last thoughts, Mark, what would you like to leave listeners with here?
Oh man, just keep plugging away. The unfortunate thing I see is that people quit because they feel like it gets hard, and it is hard. Like I remember starting out and it was hard, but it's only hard short term. Once you get past that place, I can't even imagine. I can't even put myself in that place of imagining going back to work in a 9-to-5. I came from a factory. I was working in a factory, slinging steel 12 hours a day. I can't even imagine still being in that place. So do whatever you have to do to overcome the fear and overcome the obstacles and just keep plugging away, because real estate can and will offer you an incredible life once you get to the level that you need to be at.
So good. And I wish I had that picture of you working in that factory, man, because it is surreal. So if we can somehow get that and link that into this, I think that would resonate with people, because it's crazy to think, right? That fear moment of, I'm doing this job and then I want to transition. I want more for my life, but that's a scary leap. and you made the leap, man. And you're saying you never look back. So appreciate you for sharing that. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Awesome. Yeah. It's been a blast. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mark. Boom, another episode in the books. Thank you guys again for listening. Before I let you go, I just wanted to invite you to our Facebook group, Virtual Deal Makers. It's a perfect place to connect and collaborate with other like-minded real estate investors. And all you have to do is simply search Virtual Deal Makers on Facebook and apply to join the group. Thanks again to our sponsor, Property Pros Marketing, for supporting the show. Go ahead and check them out at propertyprosmarketing.com to elevate your lead generation. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It really helps, and we greatly appreciate it. Share the podcast with your friends, and stay tuned for more valuable insights. Visit thevirtualmillionaires.com to see everything about the episode and connect with me. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, keep crushing those deals and building your real estate empire. This is Michael McDonald signing off from the Virtual Millionaire Show.